What's up guys, Groovy Guitar Dude here with a beginner guitar tutorial for Enough For You by Olivia Rodrigo. If this video helps you out, hit that like and subscribe button and let me know in the comments down below what are the songs by Olivia Rodrigo that you want to learn on guitar. Guys, the first thing that you want to know to play Enough For You on guitar is that we're going to be in standard tuning and we will not need a capo for this song. The next thing that you want to know to play Enough For You on guitar is the structure of this song. We're going to start out with a verse, then go to chorus, then verse and chorus again, then we're going to have a bridge, and then we're going to finish up the song with one last chorus. And the last thing that you want to know before we dive into Enough For You is the three chords that you need to play this song. The first one is G, the next one is E minor, and the last one is C. And I'll have a short video lesson for each of those chords linked in the pinned comment below for those of you who need them. And with all that in mind, guys, let's dive into Enough For You. Guys, this is such a beautifully sad song. If you've been on this channel for a while, you know I'm a sucker for those kinds of songs. And this is actually one of my favorite kind of songs where it's actually a fairly simple chord progression, but it has very beautiful finger picking to go along with it. It's also one of those songs that sounds harder to play than it actually is. So even if you're a beginner, this is actually a pretty good place to start for finger picking because the chord progressions we're using over on this side are fairly beginner friendly, and even the finger picking on this side is fairly beginner friendly as well. So let's dive into it. The first thing that we're going to take a look at for Enough For You is what we're playing for our verses. For our verses, we're going to have a simple chord progression, then we're going to have a picking pattern to go along with it. First, let's take a look at that chord progression. Our chord progression for our verses is going to be G, E minor, C, and C again. Pretty straightforward, pretty beginner-friendly chord progression. Next, let's dive into what we're playing for our finger-picking pattern. And we're actually going to use the same finger-picking pattern throughout the whole entire song. So every part of this song is going to stay with the same finger-picking pattern, but our chord progression is going to change up a little bit depending on where we're at in the song. But before we dive into that really quick, I want to make sure you guys know what bass notes are. If you don't know what a bass note is, all it is the lowest note of whatever chord you're playing. And it's relevant because we're going to be using bass notes throughout our picking pattern. So a real quick run through of the bass notes that we're going to be using in this song is for our G chord, that's going to be on the low E. For our E minor, that's also going to be on the low E. And then for our C chord, that's going to be on the A. Keep those in mind because we will use those throughout the entire picking pattern that's going to be used throughout the song. So with that in mind, let's walk through this picking pattern. We'll start with our first chord here as our example, that G chord. What we're going to do is we're going to pick our bass note. So for our G, that's our low E. And then we're going to pick our G and B strings together at the same time. And then we're going to pick our G string again, just by itself. And then D. And then G. Just about like that, but obviously faster. So that is going to be the picking pattern that we're playing throughout the whole entire song. The verses, as well as all the other parts that we're playing that we'll get to later. Just that picking pattern. So even if that seems intimidating, it is repeated throughout the whole entire song. So just make sure you get that down before you move too much further along, because we're going to be using it a lot. And once you get that down, the rest of the song is going to be a breeze because it's pretty simple chord progressions over on this side. So just a really quick run through of what that'll actually look like a little closer to full speed with our G chord is about like this. And that should sound a little bit more familiar. That's the first note or first set of notes in the song. So basically that's it. That picking pattern is going to be played for each chord in our verse chord progression, and then that's just going to repeat through all of our verses. So a little walkthrough of what that whole verse chord progression with that picking pattern will look about like this. We'll start with our G chord here. We'll go bass note, G and B, G, D, G, and then we'll go to the E minor. Same thing here, bass note, G and B, G, D, G. Then we'll go to C, bass note, G and B, G, D, G. And we'll do that same thing again. So bass note, G and B, G, D, G. Just like that, but obviously faster. And then that's going to repeat through all of our verses. So like I said, guys, nothing too crazy here. The chord progressions that we're using for this are very beginner friendly. And the picking pattern here, it is going to be a little bit tricky for the beginners out there who haven't messed with finger picking very much yet. But this is actually a pretty good place to start with finger picking. And again, it does repeat this same pattern through the whole song. So if you can get it down for one part, it just repeats the same thing through the entire song. All we're changing up is just some simple chord progressions on this side. So with all that in mind, guys, I'm going to play through that verse chord progression with that picking pattern a couple of times slowly so that you can make sure you have all the right stuff in all the right places. Then I'll play through it a couple times full speed so that you can match it up with the speed of the song. So slowly a couple times first through the verse, chord progression, and picking pattern will look about like this without me talking. And a couple of times full speed through the chord progression and picking pattern. It's going to repeat through all the verses on Enough For You. Will look about like this without me talking. And from there, guys, the only other thing you need to know to play Enough For You on guitar is what we're playing for all of our choruses and our bridge. And this is going to look super familiar because it's almost the same thing that we were just playing for our verses with one very minor change. You probably already noticed it, but let's walk through this together. The chord progression we're going to be using for our choruses and our bridge is going to be G, E minor, C, and then back to G. And going back to that G instead of playing the C twice like we did in the verse is literally the only difference between what we're playing in our verses and what we're playing in our choruses and our bridge. We're also going to be using the same exact picking pattern. I'm not going to go over that a whole lot because, like I said, it's almost exactly the same thing. All we're doing is just, instead of playing that second C chord like we did in the chorus, we're going to go back to a G there and play that. But a quick little walkthrough of what that whole thing will look like with our chord progression and our picking pattern is about like this. We'll start with that G chord. We're going to go bass note, G and B, G, D, G, E minor, bass note, G and B, G, D, G, C chord, bass note, G and B, G, D, G. And here's the change, go back to the G chord, bass note, G and B, G, D, G. And that is just going to repeat just like that, but obviously faster, through all of our choruses and through our bridge as well. And that's the only other thing you need to know to play this song. Like I said, guys, fairly beginner friendly as far as a finger picking song like this goes, because we just have very simple and very similar chord progressions on this side through the whole song. And then the picking pattern that we're using over here is not extremely complex. Probably the most difficult thing about this is just how fast that picking pattern is. So same thing here, guys. I'm really not going to spend a lot of time going over this slowly because it's almost the same exact thing that we went over for the verse. All we're doing is just switching up back to that G chord instead of going to that second C chord. So a couple of times full speed through the chord progression that we're going to be repeating through all of our choruses and our bridge on Enough For You will look about like this without me talking. And guys, that is everything you need to know to play Enough For You on guitar. As always, if you have any questions, you can hit me up in the comments down below. I'm usually pretty quick getting back to those. And again, if this video helped you out, hit that subscribe button. I have about 850 other guitar and ukulele lessons on this channel. I usually try to post at least 3 to 5 new lessons every single week. So if you're learning guitar or ukulele, there could not be a more perfect channel for you to check out. If you want to see a sneak peek of what songs I'm working on next, be sure to hit up my Instagram at the Groovy Guitar Dude. Link for that will be in the description below. And lastly guys, if you want to support the channel and get your name in the credits at the end of each new guitar tutorial, you can hit my Patreon at patreon.com/thegroovyguitardude. Link for that will be in the description below as well. Guys, Enough For You is one of those just beautifully sad songs that I'm such a sucker for and that I talk about all the time on this channel. You guys are probably sick of hearing me talk about these beautifully sad songs that I'm such a sucker for. But I love these kind of songs, and especially a song like this, that it's just a really simple chord progression, and it's a pretty simple finger picking pattern to go along with it, but it's just so dynamic. I love the feel of that kind of guitar setup, a simple chord progression with a fairly simple finger picking pattern to go along with it. One of my all-time favorite songs is Begin Again by Taylor Swift, and that chord progression, strum pattern, or chord progression picking pattern situation in that song is actually really similar to the chord progression picking pattern situation in this song. It's even in the same key and has a lot of the same chords. And I love this song for a lot of the same reasons that I love that song musically. It's just beautiful, and I'm a total sucker for that kind of feel. So I had a lot of fun learning this song. I hope you guys have a lot of fun learning it as well, and hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see y'all soon.